For the past few years, fans of Inti Creates and Sunsoft have been experiencing a renaissance for the Blaster Master franchise, thanks to Inti's Blaster Master Zero reboot series, masterfully rebirthing the series from zero as the name implies, beginning with a remake of the original Famicom and NES titles, and then taking the series in an all-new direction to the furthest reaches of space. All the while progressively refining the series' side-scrolling action and top-down dungeon-crawling gameplay, plus reimagining story elements from both the original Blaster Master lore and various Sunsoft properties as well, fusing them together in a cohesive fashion. Of course, we covered both of the previous titles in great detail in our two-part retrospective series that is available now. So if you need to catch up on the series' origins and that juicy lore, you're free to watch those. After one heck of a 4 to 5 month hype season following its New Game Plus Expo announcement in March, we have finally arrived at the final piece to the trilogy, Blaster Master 03. Unlike our retrospective series, we will be foregoing the major story spoilers today, at least past what is in the demo version already, as well as a couple of other things that were already announced by Inti themselves. That said, I do not recommend watching or playing Blaster Master 03 without being familiar with its prequels first, as this series is very narrative driven, and do spoil the endings of the prior titles from the word go. I mean, you can technically jump straight into BMZ3 for the gameplay alone, but you are going to be similarly confused like someone playing Kingdom Hearts 3 first, the deeper you go. You'd think I'm joking, but that is seriously how Inti Creates games tend to go. And don't get me started on all the supplemental material you have to read up on too. Looking at you, BMZ2 lore dump. Well, unlike other Inti franchises, you can't just play the games and understand it fairly enough, but it does help. But hey, it's gonna be alright. Our retrospective series has got you covered there. Like I've stated the last 2 times, this series is very much worth picking up and playing through in sequential order. So to answer the question whether you should buy these games right off the bat, let me get Shia LaBeouf to help me out one last time.
Yesterday, you said tomorrow, so just do it!
Thanks.
Make your dreams come true!
Thanks.
Just do it!
Thank you. With that out of the way, is the conclusion to the Jason saga everything that the BMZ faithful have been hoping for? Or is this a reversal of fate for the worst? Let's climb aboard Gaia-Sophia SV and find out. Blaster Master 03 picks up right where BMZ2 left off, as our heroes Jason, Eve, and the good froggy Fred finally arrive at the place where the series all began, Planet Sophia. Unfortunately, tragedy strikes immediately as they are captured by the Sophia Force under suspicion of being a threat to the planet, and separating our trio. Feels like a slap in the face after we spent literally an entire game saving Eve's life, doesn't it? Before Jason can even decipher why they were arrested, the mutants invade Sophia and dimensional ruptures appear everywhere. In all the commotion, Jason is able to recover Gaia-Sophia SV, blast out of jail, and begin the search for his friends. Have you seen my friend Froggy? Oh, there he is!
Not too bad.
Being on the planet where the events of Metafight, the Japanese version of Blaster Master, took place, it isn't long before the meta references come full circle when Jason meets the true original protagonist, pilot of the original Metal Attacker, and commander of the Sophia Force, Kane Gardner himself. Oh, he called, and he wants his franchise back. Jokes aside, officially, Kane is ordered to detain Jason, but decides to secretly support the quest to find Eve, since she is like a daughter to him. The rest of the supporting cast includes Kane's wife, and Nora engineer Jennifer Gardner, the original developer of the Metal Attacker project that was started in response to the mutant threat, their biological daughter Eva, who's already training to be the next greatest MA pilot. Aw, how adorable. And oh wow, she's totally bagging on Kane's MA from the NES game. Oh, that's hilarious. Lastly, we have confirmed returning MA pilots from BeamZ2. The pilot of Ear and Flower Girl herself, Kana. Yuji Natsume's greatest vision for mankind, which has been evolved from last time. Good time to mention the designs for Kana and Eve really cranked Inti's usual fanservice levels even higher for BeamZ3. They did kind of make Galgun after all. Thankfully, outside of that, the fanservice doesn't ever become a major focus of the story, as it should be, so I wouldn't worry too much about their melon instinct for now. Then hey, of course, there is Jason's spotter for this adventure. Wonder who it's gonna be this time. I bet they're gonna be sweet, kind, funny, and liveness? Boy, what are you doing in my tank? I thought I put a lock on that thing. Yup. Coming full circle on the anti-hero trope, we catch Liveness in the act of making off with Gaia-Sophia SV after his own MA, Garuda, was shot down by the Sophia Force. So we're stuck with him hanging around in our passenger seat. Oh, I'm sorry, correction. Kicking our seat. Ugh. I absolutely love these two's dynamic in this game. The conflicting nature of Jason's naive optimism versus the gigantic jerk Liveness, literally backseating the entire situation, makes for some hilariously entertaining dialogue. Watching them go from bitter rivals to slowly putting aside their differences is one of the most fulfilling character developments this game has to offer. I'm definitely glad Liveness didn't turn out to be another Copen entirely, that's for sure. As for the rest of the story, that's for you to find out, my fellow Blaster Masters. All I can say is, get ready for some storytelling that could only come from Inti Creates. You Gunvolt fans know what I mean by that, plus the obvious meta fights references, and I hope you guys were paying attention to our retrospectives and analyses when I kept reminding y'all about Blaster Master blasting again on the PS1. Just saying, keep that in the back of your mind. BeamZ3 does do a fair job of wrapping up the Jason story arc, though there were still a couple loose threads that I wish the game addressed, and I was left with some more questions by the end. Oh well. You guys will get what I mean when you play for yourselves. Or you can tune in to our launch stream, or the BeamZ3 spoiler cast that I recorded with Matt Papa of Inti Creates coming up to hear my own full thoughts. This grand tale and the game itself is presented in Inti Creates' signature 8-bit sprite style, and it is a beauty to behold as usual. There is even a clear improvement in the animations and visuals over previous titles. That's likely reflected in the $15 US cost. Just watch that Sophia fly! Inti's sound team has also upped their game in the chiptune music department, harkening back to BeamZ1 style overall, with some seriously great bops for the area themes, and other fitting tracks that made me feel things as they became appropriate in the story. My only real complaint is I wish there was more variety in the top-down dungeon themes, as the same tune from Area 1 stays relevant all the way to the endgame. But no matter, what is here is music to my ears. And the result is a serious contender for my favorite OST of the BMZ series thus far. Despite 1 and 2 already being hard to top, they did it again! As mentioned before, Jason's ride is known as Gaia-Sophia SV, the same mobile battle tank that carried our heroes across the stars to this planet. But after the events of the last game, it has been repaired using parts from Nora MA02 Andrea. The SV in the name stands for Supreme Vehicle, and indeed, it may be the most powerful iteration of Jason's MA yet. Not counting Sophia Zero, of course. Fans that played BMZ2 will already be familiar with G-Sophia SV's main abilities, like its namesake, the Gaia System, that recovers SP from landing from great heights or taking damage, and the now stock recoil jump. But the biggest upgrade comes in the separation of the main and sub-weapon categories into their own gauges. Orange for main cannons and the familiar blue for sub-weapons. The usual SP recovery items also applies to both, and Gaia System can recover both gauges at once too. Thanks to this quality of life improvement, I felt way more encouraged than in BMZ2 to have the most powerful main cannon mods equipped pretty much all the time. Especially since the penalties for running out of SP only applies to the weapon type that was depleted. Running out of main SP leaves you with a pea shooter until it recovers, and you won't be able to use sub-weapons with sub-SP gone. But you can still use the full power of your main cannon while you wait. That is a much better system. Oh, and you can hop out the top of bodies of water now, which fixes another annoyance I used to have with BMZ2. Very nice. Some of my favorite G-Sophia SV upgrades throughout the game include the Garuda's very useful homing lasers, and the multi-leg mobility upgrade that we got right at the end of the demo version. Now you can pretend to be a mutant tank yourself, while ignoring certain hazardous terrain, giving you some traction, and the fellow Sophia lookalikes will even greet you like a friend. Top of the morning to you, soldier! Keep up the good work! The only new sub-weapon I wasn't as big of a fan of was Phantom Solid, which essentially lets you place blocks wherever you want for some added puzzle elements. And let me tell ya, this game loves its puzzles, from hitting switches that correspond to your weapon types, or rotating water pipes around to create a path forward. Anyway, I felt like Phantom Solid slowed down the otherwise fast pace of the gameplay a bit too much for my liking. Then again, it lets you make walls or platforms wherever you want, so maybe the community will find a creative use for it that changes my mind on it, particularly for boss fights. And in the grand scheme of things, it's only really used for one section of the whole game, so this is only a minor nitpick for me. The most significant changes, however, come with Jason Frudnick himself. In side view levels, he can hop out of the tank for a homing shot, and get this, hover in the air Copen style. How cool is that? The era of repeatedly dying to broken knees is officially behind us. At least mostly. But hey, you have ways to avoid it now. Thank goodness. Oh my gosh, that was my most wanted feature ever since BMZ1. Inti's really listening to people with this game. I love it. Did I even mention the ladder controls have been fixed? You can just hold up on the D-pad now when you're going on a ladder. Thanks to that, all the added sections where you're just on foot by yourself feel a lot better to play than in the past. Brilliant. In top-down view, Jason's arsenal has been almost entirely reworked. He still retains his sub-weapons and the blast counter, which is now snappier and more efficient. The different types of counters are contextual to different situations, so switching between them on the fly like in BMZ2 is no longer necessary. One of those blast counters acts as a shot reflecting upgrade to the new spin dash. That's a great additional maneuver both for dodging and getting around quickly. Perhaps the most #1 important update, however, is the gun level system that has been completely rebuilt from the ground up. Talking with Matt Papa recently, this is the point he wants y'all to pay attention to as well, so listen up. Here in BMZ3, the G rifle will always have access to 5 types of weapons no matter what. Oh yes, the days from BMZ 1 and 2 of your access to the different guns being cut off as you took damage is officially over. And boy is it glorious. Now your gun level only determines the performance of your shots, increasing stats such as range, power, rate of fire, and other special effects as you raise your level. Collecting gun power-ups is still going to be just as important as ever, but now you won't feel totally defenseless at lower levels. Guns include the standard blaster that can become a terrain-piercing charge shot at level 8. Not a charge shot! The shotgun-like high diffusion. The turbo whip from BMZ2 also returns, but with a buff, allowing for combo attacks at higher levels. The obligatory gunvolt reference, Lock-On Striker, that can lock on to enemies in the radius of the radar and electrify them all in the chain. Last but not least, everyone's favorite wave beam. Crosswave. It is certainly powerful at high levels with its wide penetrating shots, but you will still want to mix up your weapons to fit the situations, especially with the various enemy weaknesses to exploit. I found having Lock-On Striker easily accessible on my shortcuts helped a ton. GV.MVP! New sub-weapon types are quite varied this time too, and aren't mostly variations on different grenades for once, like Black Hole Bomb from NT's own Mega Man 9. Well, kind of. And X-Shredder. Nice, another Copen reference. Don't forget that the good boy Fred is here to help you out too, at least once you find him. Like before, he's gonna help you out with warping back to Gaia-Sophia anytime you need to, and exiting dungeons quickly every time you pick up a major item. Now for another game changer. The VRV system that allows Jason to travel between the real world and super-dimensional space. Zelda Link to the Past style. However, his body cannot survive in the alternate dimension without the assistance of his X-Cell Charger ability from BMZ2. There is a time limit too before the X-Cell Charger runs out of juice, and Jason takes continuous damage until he exits or dies trying. In my own testing, the X-Cell Charger goes poof at around the 2-minute mark, but as Jason powers up, it will increase to a max of a little over 9 minutes. That said, the super dimensional space dungeons tend to be so short that I never found myself running up against the time limit at any point in the game, and the only reason I discovered this time limit was by complete accident when I was standing idle recording the background music for videos coming up. And also, Jason is totally safe inside Gaia-Sophia, so there's no time limit to worry about in the side view levels either. Speaking of those side view levels, the super dimensional space world will often take existing concepts from the real world and mix it up with the idea of reversing your expectations. Like previously breaking platforms reappearing along a hidden path, bounce pads making the enemies bounce instead of you, or literally flipping the level upside down Gravity Man style. Those are just the examples from the demo version, but there is some interesting gimmicks there. On the other hand, the top-down dimensional dungeons feel less inspired by comparison, presenting randomized rooms filled with strong mutants within a given layout. If you have ever played a mystery dungeon type game, it's kind of like that, meaning the path you take through a section may be changed the next time you come through it. Though if you play long enough, it won't be long before you begin seeing the same room types twice, or more. At the very least, this randomized nature may make speedruns interesting if inconsistent, since your experience is going to be a little bit different each time. Since Jason is a fugitive now, along with the usual mutants that still like to take on the form of past bosses and other beings that were infected, like the mutant Eve clones. Oh god, no! You can't have a hug! Get away from me! Jason will also have to watch out for the anti-mutant robots deployed by the Sophia Force. Wow, they even have miniature versions of some of the MAs. Makes sense. Honestly, with how durable these tin cans are, how organized and powerful they are, it's no wonder how Sophia has fended off these mutants, or should I say the Invim, for 10 years at this point. We will have to face these bots for ourselves when entering the new Sophia Force dungeons. Multi-layered facilities that often lead to useful upgrades on each floor. Combined with that area's gimmick, they will always feature crystal-like switches that must be activated with the specific gun to move forward. You'll have the choice to risk solving puzzles while avoiding the Sophia Force's overpowered machines, which I do recommend just running away. They are seriously tanky. Or you can cheese it by booting up the VRV system and entering dimensional space for a considerably easier time by comparison. Honestly speaking, there is no downside to taking the otherworldly route, unless you want to mix it up or challenge yourself, so the choice is yours. Speaking of challenges, oh boy, this game definitely brings it. Even veteran Blaster Masters may meet their match, especially with some of those in-game bosses. I know they certainly kicked my butt, but it's not in an unfair way. There is still a discernible pattern to them. Just some are going to require amazing reflexes and learning through trial and error over others. Kind of like a Mega Man game, hey look at that! Some bosses even have the new ability to escape through dimensional space towards the end of their fight, so make sure both Gaia-Sophia SV and Jason are properly prepared, as some battles will have side view and top-down sections. The important thing is, they're still fun to blast a new one into. But if you do need an extra boost, the energy guard item has been reworked entirely too. First, the bad news. It's no longer a permanent upgrade that recharges. Instead, they are disposable items for either Jason or Gaia-Sophia. That on the bright side will not only protect your gun level, but temporarily increase your hit points too. So in practice, you can stockpile a bunch of energy guards and tank most things in the game no problem. At first, I didn't know how I would feel about this change, but in the grand scheme of things, while I still do miss the old regenerating energy guard, I am actually fine with this iteration. Because, don't you worry. The game is balanced around them, and for some instances, like those aforementioned endgame bosses, you're seriously going to need to bulk up on as many energy guards as you possibly can just to survive. In terms of map design, BMZ3 returns to its roots with every area being interconnected in some way, though not as organically as the original, since you need only locate the launch pads in each area to warp to the next one. I won't lie, that took me a little bit to figure it out the first time. Wait, did I just say warp? That's right, BMZ3 finally introduces a fast travel system! Simply activate a save point, and you can warp back to it from another one whenever you want to, which severely cuts down on backtracking time. And believe me, BMZ3 will ask you to backtrack more often than the previous two games, so you're gonna need it. The map system itself is technically the most well-designed one yet, allowing you to toggle different areas, take a gander at all the maps of every single dungeon and section without physically being there, display what you need to collect, and so on. There is, however, one thing that's really bothered me. Because energy guards are disposable now, that means they become infinitely respawnable items at their original locations. The issue I have with that is then the item icons on the map between energy guards and more important upgrades are nearly identical. I understand that some important items will flash on the map screen to help differentiate, but I don't think that's even consistent, and you're still left with a giant mess of a map. Especially now that you have 2 different dimensions to go through. Oh god, they get messy. It's like trying to read a map to a large dungeon in a strategy guide. Anyway, the whole energy guard icon thing led me to getting lost as to where to go for an upgrade I missed on more than one occasion. Thing is, I have the perfect fix for this too. Just give energy guards a uniquely designed icon to help set them apart at a glance on the map. If Inti does address this issue in a patch later on, that would actually fix my biggest nitpick with this game. My only other small nitpick has to do with length. The amount of areas don't number as low as BMZ2 did, but it doesn't quite reach BMZ1's 8 or 9 areas either. As I was going through, I did feel like things were heading towards the end a little too fast. At the end of the day though, I estimated around 6 to 8 hours for a first time 100% playthrough, which is actually on par with BMZ 1 and 2. So honestly, my only nitpick is an extra area or 2 would have really felt like the perfect length. On the other hand, there is something to be said about not padding out the game and keeping it short and sweet, as it does feel like every story chapter that you go through has a purpose to it, and there is a reason why you are in that new area every single time. In other words, no part of the game felt like filler to me. It was laser sharply focused on the main quest. If anything, me saying I love this game so much, I want more of it, is possibly the largest compliment I can pay to BMZ3. Hopefully some free updates and DLC is on the way to flesh out the content of this game, because as it currently stands, I was not able to unlock any additional modes. No destroyer mode, no unlimited mode, no EX characters or anything of the sort, which does limit the replayability compared to the past titles once the main adventure is over with. But if my upcoming interview with Inti's Matt Papa is any indication, while it sounds like there is no planned DLC at this time, quote unquote, perhaps it is too early to give up hope just yet. And I do hope Inti will continue to give me more reasons to return to this world in the future, even if I gotta pay even more on top of my limited run collector's edition and the Japan exclusive BMZ trilogy I'm picking up for the Japanese voice acting. Oh god, Inti, what have you done to my wallet? Speaking of that JP voice acting, Inti has recently produced fully voiced cutscenes in the Japanese language for the BMZ trilogy compilation exclusive to their region. However, as it currently stands, beyond an exception being made for the limited run version of BMZ 3, whose pre-order window has now passed, there are currently no plans to update the digital versions of BMZ 1 through 3 with the voice acting. And given that I'm reviewing the digital version today, I cannot comment on the quality of the voice acting just yet. But I will say from the previews that have been put out so far, it does sound like that they have nailed it overall, and I am looking forward to hearing it myself within the full context. However, and this isn't a knock against BMZ 3 itself because the game is great anyway, but it is a darn shame most are going to miss out on the voiceovers unless they look it up on YouTube, content which I hope to provide soon, as I think it will add some serious value to the presentation. That said, Matt Papa has assured me that Inti has heard people's requests loud and clear for the voices to be made available for the digital versions. So, no promises yet, but let's pray something comes of that. Alright, I only have a couple more things to say. I actually encountered some glitches in this current 1.0 build. In a later area of the game, there is a room where you're gonna have to upload keycard data to get an elevator moving, but you'll have to guard yourself against foes during that process. For whatever reason, the first time I completed the keycard upload, Gaia-Sophia SV remained idle. I couldn't move or do anything at all, so the animation that activates the elevator never happened. Looks like I accidentally triggered a soft lock, so my only recourse was to close and open the game again. Thankfully there was a save point right next to where I was, so it wasn't a big deal. The other glitch I'll talk about is something I was able to recreate in an even later area that I can't disclose. All you need to know is sometimes the music would not resume after I cleared a mutant mob in super dimensional space. So I went through the rest of the dungeon with an eerie silence other than the sound effects. Everything was good again once I exited the dungeon, however. I'm sure this stuff I mentioned is going to get fixed with a patch at some point, so you may not even encounter these same things when you play. Otherwise, there were definitely no crashes or any crazy performance issues. Everything ran at a silky smooth 60 FPS all day long, baby, playing on my Nintendo Switch. The question becomes then, is BMZ3 worth that $15 asking price for the core experience? The obvious answer is a resounding yes! From the tight gameplay and the quality of life improvements that make this a blast to play, to the headbanger of a soundtrack, and the conclusion to Jason's story that I believe is gonna turn some heads. Blaster Master 03 truly does rise above the rest as the pinnacle of mutant blasting action. Not only as my favorite of the BMZ series, but perhaps my favorite Inti Creates developed title, period. I have no way of knowing what the reaction is going to be pre-release as I'm recording this review, but I do have a feeling that BMZ3 will be fondly remembered among fans as a truly special game. One for the ages. That's why I'm awarding BMZ3 with an out of this world 9.5 out of 10. And hey, if Inti were to address those map issues I mentioned, I may be willing to bump that up to a perfect 10 out of 10. So you know, Inti, ball's in your court now. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. It's been a truly wild ride covering this game and the BMZ series in general. I hope you fellow fans out there might come away feeling the wait was worth it like I have. And thank you for bearing with me with all the analysis content we did, humoring me on some of the theories, but overall it was all in good fun and I just hope you enjoyed it all. Of course, we will have more BMZ3 content coming up, such as the launch stream and the spoiler cast with Matt Fermenti. Otherwise, stay tuned to ShadowRockZX for all things Blaster Master, Inti Create, and Mega Man. Thank you for all the support, including our channel members who keep the wheels on our Gaia-Sophia spinning. Thanks to our friends at Inti for supporting our endeavors, and without further ado, let's get to blasting. Until next time, rock on, and remember, mutant scum never learn.